a lot of money to do a joint effort, because it could mean millions or billions back in penalties, back wages, and taxes. Organized labor likes it because the more people we define as employees, the larger that pool they can try and organize. And so, all around, everyone's in favor of it. Employers need to understand, if you use independent contractors, make sure they are. If not, get some good advice. There's a crackdown on unpaid internships. The idea here is that if you're an unpaid intern, the traditional thing was you would come to work as a student, learn some business experience, and your resume would be put a little bit above everyone else in your graduating class. The trade-off is that your free work would receive back valuable education and mentoring. What DOL is looking at under this category is, if there's anybody doing a job that could be done by a paid person and they're not really getting that benefit of that mentoring and that education, they're just being used as free labor, they're going to enforce against that. Mandatory compliance plans on the bottom. Hilda Solis's grand vision of Plan, Prevent, and Protect. Plan, Prevent, and Protect is the idea that an employer must look at all the regulations that could potentially impact their work, their shop. They have to come up with a plan on how they're going to deal with each one and protect against it. They have to follow that plan and report to DOL what they're doing. It's now proactive, kind of like, if you don't do this, we're going to presume that you're violating it. And even if there's never been an injury, never been a citation, or anything else, if they're not complying with showing they've got this plan in place, they will be deemed to be out of compliance. So the burden is now on employers. If you're not familiar with Plan, Prevent, and Protect, please read up on it. The 2010 elections changed the nature of the House of Representatives. Republicans came into power. Democratic majority in the Senate was weakened. In the agencies that we're talking about, as we're saying that the focus is now on regulation rather than legislation, Seth Harris at the Department of Labor, his sentence in green, our agenda hasn't changed. So, despite the change in Congress, despite the results of the elections, the regulatory agencies that are putting these things into place, and there is a time frame where they trickle down and they become enforceable, their agenda hasn't changed. So, again, first theme of my talks is always, I promote fairness and I rally against unfairness. Second is, get educated, get aware of what's going on. Call us, call your local chamber, call a trade association, call your senator, call your congressman. Find out how this can affect you. Write a letter to the editor, write a letter to an op-ed to the newspaper. Sit down and have a discussion with your senator or your congressperson. And you've got contact sheets in the folders that I provided as well that have got both your senators and Tim Holden's contact information. The bottom line is, and the reason this is organized labor's agenda, is a lot of the policies trickling through Washington are being promoted by organized labor because they made a severe investment, a significant investment into getting into power friendly people that are now enacting policies that can be described as pro-worker, they can be described as weakening the bar to organizing, they can be described as not friendly to employers. But again, the bottom line is, everybody has a right to speak. Just like the people I went and met with outside that are protesting our meeting here today, I told them, I'm going to disagree with a lot of what you stand for, but I will respect your right to speak. Please also respect the employer's right to speak. And we had a good discussion. That's the same thing I'm promoting here. I'm encouraging all of you. Get informed. Call us if you need to learn more. We're happy to help. We've got materials to help. But get involved. And other than that, anybody have any questions? Yes, sir. Yes, Joe.
You had one slide up about the amount of money that was spent by labor and unions on political campaigns in 2008. Is that membership dues money, or is that raised money? Is that contributed money? Is there a breakdown on that?
I can tell you that most, if not all, of the labor unions have COPE funds by some name, which is the Committee for Political Education, or the whatever name it's called. And those are the political spending. It's my understanding that also dues monies that are going to unions may be used for other politically related activities. because there is a procedure by a person who is in a non-right-to-work state. They can request a refund for what's being used of their dues for politics. The COPE funds are often voluntary. But for example, I read SEIU's Constitution from 2008 at their Puerto Rican convention. They do it, I think, every 4 years. And there was a strong encouragement that every local union should require or should encourage at least 20% of their membership to belong to COPE. Also, if they don't hit their mark, that local union needs to make up the difference. So your question is not exactly an easy one. It's a mixed answer. But I hope I've addressed it. Yes?
You mentioned Tim Holden. Do you have any insight as to how he's viewed in terms of the fairness approach on discussion?
Very little. But I did look at his website yesterday and trying to get a better understanding of who he was, because I know he governs this district. I know he has been described by some as a Blue Dog Democrat. I know that his family history has been involved in the labor movement. I know that he has been ranked as one of the more conservative Democrats, and my understanding is that he also has received our Spirit of Enterprise Award, which is very simple. Depending on your voting on issues that are important to the chamber, if you get a high enough ranking on that, then you get our award. And our endorsements are also the same way, depending on what your voting record is. And so, I'd say probably also talk to the local chamber who can give you more of his specific flavor. You're welcome. Yes, sir.
I had a question in regards to a lot of the prospective regulations that the DOL is on their list. You know, now that we're what, almost 3/4 of the way, or over 3/4 of the way through the first term of the Obama administration, why have they pushed these things through? They haven't been able to push them through, or do you expect them in the next year and a half, with the election coming up next year, to get any of that through? Because it doesn't appear that they've been all that successful in changing too many things.
Tommy or John?
Doesn't matter.
Okay, good question. The regulatory process in DC, in Washington, is a slow one. Some of the things that are being put into place from President Obama's initial executive orders that were written when he came in and signed very shortly after he took office, to trickle down through the agency to get a proposed rule out to carry it forth, to get comments back in a reasonable period of time, to either change, modify, or just put it in place, that does take time. I know that, for example, the redesign of the employee rights poster was one of the original executive orders, and it took quite a while before that got through DOL and got put into place. So it does take time, and some things are going to put on higher priorities than others. For example, the 90-item list on DOL, some of those have a very high priority. They're being pushed, and some are carries over from the previous half year's regulatory agenda, because it comes out every 6 months. And so I guess because they have priorities that they're pushing as well, and so they try and move, but even then, for the comment period, to make sure that it's done where everybody has a chance to comment, which is why I encourage everybody to comment, if it's going to affect you, that does take time.
Okay. I had one other question that's on a different subject. The independent contractor issue actually hits home with me, because I was hired by an agency, and I'll say this, not in this state. It was illegal. I was paid as an independent contractor for almost 3 years, and I went to an office every day, and they did that to avoid having to pay their share of my payroll taxes and stuff like that. They're not in business anymore, but if the chamber doesn't have a policy that people should be able to have independent contractors doing work that is an independent contracting, you know, like paying someone as an independent contractor when they go to work and work literally like every other employee, just to avoid payroll taxes and stuff like that.
The chamber would not take a policy that an employer should violate the law. And if a person is not a true independent contractor and DOL is enforcing against it, then that's the regulatory agency doing the job it's supposed to be doing. The concern, and why I bring it up, is that DOL is really stepping up their enforcement activities. And anytime there is a greater focus on certain enforcement activities, it may be a human tendency